All right, we're live. All right, hello. Welcome to the Seeking Context podcast, the podcast where we discuss the way our lives, careers, and beliefs have unfolded over time. And we look how that fits into context, the context of family, community, and history itself. As you can see, I am not Justin Wheeland. My name's Caden Runnels. I'm the editor and producer for the Seeking Context podcast. And as you can see, I'm a guest host sometimes. Although I've been on an episode of the Seeking Context podcast, this will be my first guest. And I know I'd have to start off strong. And what better way to do that than to ask the most interesting and wonderful person I have ever met to be on the show. And that would be Mr. Bob Peterson. I have had the privilege to be taught by Mr. Peterson for the past 2 years. And hopefully I will learn much more as time goes on. Mr. Peterson is the theater department chair at Butler Community College in El Dorado, Kansas. And on top of being a renowned director for the stage, he also has talent in acting, playwriting, and teaching. So the biggest welcome to Mr. Peterson. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. And after that wonderful introduction, it's sort of like I wish I knew me. I mean,
and
I had no idea I was that. That's fabulous.
Everyone's wants to know you. That's what we're here for.
You're much too generous, but that's nice. Thanks.
Well, we'll start off, and I think I'll just ask, who is Bob Peterson? Like, what are your origins, and what led you into the career path that you're on?
Very interesting. My father was in fact, I have a picture of him somewhere. My father was a music teacher and taught in a small town called Gridley, Kansas. And so whenever he would have events like conferences and music conference and so whatever, and he was to provide the entertainment, that was me at 4 years old. So I was singing and dancing and hoofing for audiences before I was even in grade school. Wow. And he gave me the bug, and immediately I took to it. I didn't have, excuse me, crick in the neck this morning. I didn't have stage fright. I just really loved doing it. And so I've always been, and other than that, I don't know. I've just been interested always in the performing arts and any arts of any kind, but the performing arts always absolutely fascinated me. So from the very, very beginning, that's what I did. My first big role was I was angel number 2 in the first grade Christmas pageant. And I'll never forget, I stood on this chair, and in front of the chair was this cardboard cloud painted with white tempera paint. It was fabulous. And at the end of it, I got to get off the cloud, go downstage towards the footlights, and sing Silent Night. Then the applause. I was hooked. And that's it. And so I remember that is really one of my first performances. It's really great. And so since then, I've just been involved in theater. And I went to Emporia State University, where I studied with Karl Bruder, whom I do have lots of pictures of, who is my mentor, and got really wonderful opportunities there. Went on a USO show in 1969 or whatever, toured Japan, Korea, Philippines, Guam. Wonderful experiences. And so that's it.
Wow. And so you studied with Karl Bruder at Emporia, right, and you got your master's there, correct?
Yeah. Interesting. I took a year off and I taught at Topeka High School. And one of my students was Janie. She's now Jane Howdyshell, who, of course, won the Tony 3 years ago for her performance in The Humans. And I understand Jane's making the movie. But, of course, that all got stopped because of COVID. So I'm really proud of her and proud of all my students that have gone on to do successes, whether it be in theater or whether it be in anything else, the law, business, ministry, stay-at-home dads, stay-at-home moms. It's been great to see them, what theater has done for them.
Right. So after you got your master's, well, this isn't directly after, but I understand that you also have been part of short films and other pictures.
Yeah, I was in a feature for Miramax, which Alex Graves, who later went on to produce Game of Thrones, West Wing, etc., and direct, and was up for the Emmy several times for directing, in a film called The Crude Oasis. And the reason I got that was because Alex is from El Dorado, Kansas. And he came home to make a film. And when he would come home as a student at USC, and would do a film in the summer then to take back for his film class, he would ask me to be in his short films, and I was. And I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, crazy stuff. And Alex said to me, Bob, when I do my first feature film, there's going to be a part for you. And I went, oh, okay, yeah. Well, he was right. He remembered. And it's really a nice film. It's called The Crude Oasis. You can go on eBay and buy a copy, I think. It was really fun. And then he used a lot of my students.
Mm-hmm.
One of those students was Scott McPhail. Scott then went on. He's now working at Paramount Pictures. And he produced a short film called The Good Things, and which won the Deauville Film Festival as the outstanding short film, and was up for the final 10 of the Academy. And it was really great fun filming that. I worked with Will Wheaton, mm-hmm. and wonderful fun. And then I did a couple of other short films. I've been in a couple of other movies too. So, and that was when I was on sabbatical. It's been great fun, great experience. Yeah.
And you've talked to me and all your students about the Crude Oasis a few times. I never realized that it was like reviewed by Variety, and I think the New York Times. That they have. I never realized the scope of it until I actually was looking into it a while back.
Yeah, it was. In fact, it played all the major art houses in New York, Chicago, Kansas City, Dallas, Los Angeles. In fact, one of my greatest regrets in my life. Of course, I saw it when it opened in Kansas City, and I had a ticket, bought a plane ticket to go to New York to see it in New York City. Mm-hmm. Something came up, and I didn't end up going. And one of the regrets I have is it played at a couple of film festivals. I went to one of the film festivals that it was played at the Santa Fe Film Festival. I missed going to see it at the Santa Fe Film Festival because it was the same night as Delta Psi Omega initiation. Now that tells you how dedicated I am. I gave up seeing my film at the Santa Fe Film Festival, which was reviewed well.
Mm-hmm.
Delta Psi.
So did you ever see it in any film festival or anything?
Yeah. There was a film festival, believe it or not, in Nebraska, like Omaha. And I drove through a flood to see it. And it was well received, well reviewed, and it was great fun.
So when you went to it, did anyone recognize you as?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then also it played, the Sundance Film Festival at the same time. And where's that, Utah? It's Robert Redford thing. Well, the Sundance Festival was at the same time, and it played there, and I flew out to see it. And that was, just full of, industry people. And Rita Wilson, who is Tom Hanks' wife, was at Provo at the time, and it was really wonderful. And she and Scott McPhail, of course, were buddies, and it was really great. So I got to see it at a couple of film festivals. It was really
okay. So, and I didn't even bring it with me, but in acting classes, you use a lot of phrases and stories that you repeat a lot. And so a while back, I wrote as many down as I could and that the class could think of, and we titled them Petersonisms. I don't know if that's unique to our class, but once we hear you say them enough, we all kind of pick it up. I've said fa fa foo foo like a lot, and I don't know if anyone knows what that means. So what are some of the origins of these Petersonisms, like you done good, or everything on your back must feed your soul, or I have to sit in a hot tub of water?
You done good is from one of my best friends when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Raymond Yarnell. Whenever he did something great or completed something or got it done, he'd say, you done good. It was wonderful. So that just stuck with me all this time. Everything on your back must feed your soul, of course, is Stella Adler, the great acting teacher. And she talked about that in one of her master classes, that everything you put on your back must feed your soul.
Did you say that was Uta Hagen?
No, that one was Stella Adler.
Oh, okay.
Now, Uta Hagen, that's a whole nother great acting teacher. She's fabulous. In fact, I just got another book on her this week, which I'm going to read and hopefully refresh myself for acting class, because that's another story. Mm-hmm. Sitting in a tub of water, that was Karl Bruder, Doc Bruder, my mentor. Every time he would cast a show, he would say, I'm going to go sit in a tub of hot water, because it would clear his mind. And it's interesting because when I did Where's Charlie for him, thousands of years ago, and I played Charlie, he was so brilliant as a director that he would say, go sit in a hot tub of water and think about that, Bob. And I said, but Doc, I don't take baths. And he said, stand in the shower for 10 minutes under hot water. And to this day, I do that.
Wow. I always thought that was maybe just a hyperbole or like,
No,
just a
I
saying.
really do that.
Wow.
I do that. Yeah. I sit in a tub of hot water. And Doc Bruder taught me that. He said, it just clears your mind.
Wow.
You can think about stuff. So that's good.
Never thought about that. I have to. Well, I've thought about it obviously every time you've told me it, but I've never realized the importance of hot tub of water or hot shower.
Yeah, it is. Hot water is good for you. Good
So,
to drink, even.
Right, like with some herbs and stuff, and then you got yourself a tea.
Absolutely.
So we talked a little bit about your students who have went to California to do things, but I know that you have a lot of experience with California and that you have a love for the state and the industry there. So I want to know what your history with the state is. And if you, like you said, you have some connections, if you have any, big wig connections in Hollywood or California.
Yeah. Well, my first visit to California was when I was a boy and we went to Disneyland. Oh. I was probably 7 years old. Knott's Berry Farm, we did the whole routine. My father was, into making sure his children went to every state of the union or something. I wouldn't serious. Yeah,
so
seriously.
You've been to every state?
No, I have not been to Hawaii yet, and that's about the only one I haven't been to.
Oh, okay. You've been to Alaska?
I've been to Alaska. Oh, I went to Alaska because, going off track here, I toured with the USO show, and we stopped in Alaska before we took off to go to Japan. So I saw an airport in Alaska.
Wow.
So anyway, California, I went on a sabbatical in 1996 to California. And my sabbatical was a whole semester, and I was there to work a play recording, and I had a play staged reading one of my plays at a 99-seat equity waiver theater. It was interesting because when I drove in to California, I was home. It was the strangest feeling. I thought, boy, this is really terrific. I like this. Yeah, and Los Angeles is a wicked city. I mean, crime and punishment. That's one of them. And sirens and fire engines and everything. But I thought this was kind of neat. I just loved the energy because I had Tower books and the Book Soup and Towered Records and and all these wonderful places, the Getty Museum and all these places. And the problem is Los Angeles, of course, is the home of nothing. If there's anything wonderful, they tear it down. Unlike New York, which I love also, but climate's nice in LA. So at any rate, I just really liked living in LA and working in the theater there, even though it's a film town and New York, of course, is theater. But it was really fun, and I got to know people, and basically my knowing bigwigs is by 6 degrees of separation. Mm-hmm. I know a student who knows Steven Spielberg, or I know this person who this. The closest I ever got to really celebrities, of course, is I bumped into Whoopi Goldberg at 20th Century City, and Century City, and Charles Nelson Riley and I had an exchange at Tower Records. So,
wait.
And if you don't know who Charles Nelson Riley is, look him up. He is just fabulous, just brilliant actor.
That's not the one.
Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Yeah, and good director. Oh, we looked at him telling a story in Audition Techniques.
Mm-hmm. That was
fabulous man.
That wasn't the one that you followed throughout a few.
Yes, I did, and then I stopped. Yes, I stopped.
That's maybe don't admit that, but
cut that part out.
Yeah, we'll do that in post production. Well, I don't think he worries now. I don't think he's worried about you stalking him.
Well, he's dead.
Well, then he really doesn't worry.
Yeah, he doesn't care. He doesn't really care. So at any rate, I'm very, very lucky to know some people in Los Angeles, and great fun.
I know you were planning on taking a trip soon. Has that already happened, or?
No, it's coming up in 2 weeks and 6 days.
Wow. And I know you went through your itinerary at some point, but I know you have like a tradition of like, I go here to sit outside here. And so So you're going to follow that to a T, no changes?
If I can, because you see, the city opens up the week before I come. They heard I was coming.
Yeah.
And they said, we got to open this up for Bob Peterson. So at any rate, the city, I think the mask mandate is still in force, but they've opened up the city in terms of, restaurants and whatever. But my first stop, this is just a very weird thing. If anybody listens to this, they're going to go, as soon as I get off the plane, I go to the Hugo Boss store in the airport and buy a pair of socks.
Oh.
That is a tradition. And the reason why is several trips ago, I realized, oh my gosh, I didn't bring enough socks. So I stopped by the Hugo Boss store and picked up a pair of socks. And then ever since then, it's just been a tradition. I don't leave the airport until I bought a pair of socks at the Hugo Boss store. That was really too much information.
Well, no. Do you have like a collection of different novelty socks, or is it just like plain?
And I do. And I have my Hugo Boss socks. Absolutely.
Nice.
True, for sure. And so, I do have a tradition of certain. And by the way, some of the restaurants, my favorite French restaurant, closed and will not be reopening. But there's a new restaurant I found out opening in its spot, in its place. But I love going to this one French restaurant. It was just always had a meal there. It was wonderful. And they knew me. They knew me coming every 6 months. They remembered me. It's great.
Did you have a picture on the wall and a menu item, the Peterson?
Yeah, basically, yes. And by the way, I don't do this anymore for obvious reasons. But I used to get a haircut in this one barbershop in Los Angeles. And this girl, she was a stylist. She had her mom and pop shop. And I would always go there every time I went to LA. She, I was a customer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what can I say? And there was a men's shop that I used to go to. That's where I bought that one coat that it's legendary now.
Yes.
But that store's closed. They're all closed. I shut them. I visit, they shut down.
Yeah, you are kind of like their highest guest they'll ever get. They go, oh, Mr. Peterson showed up. It's time to shut down. It doesn't get better than this.
For sure. So there's traditions, and that's what makes it fun.
Of course. So I've been listening to Katharine Hepburn's memoir, and I would have never even thought about it unless you have such high praise for her and all of her work. And in writing this book, she starts it off by talking about how throughout her entire life she could possibly never talk about who she was or what she came from. And then she realized that was like a character of her as an actress, or the character of an actress saying this, and she wanted to discover who Miss Hepburn really was. And she thought she was just wearing a mask. And she brings up a point that she's not the first to make, but it was just brought about by, someone who's so famous, that she says that all people are actors and that we are putting on a performance everywhere we go. And I personally agree, but I wanted to know if you think that other people perform, if everyone's an actor, and maybe, and that if go ahead.
We're always wearing a mask. Well, see, what you've just described is the changes of self-exercise, exercise number 3, from acting 1. We are different selves in different situations. I'm now Bob Peterson, being interviewed in his office, the professor.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go to lunch and I'll be somebody else. I'll be the hungry patron who is wanting his steak well done, even though the chef will only do it medium well. Mm-hmm. We all are putting on masks all the time, and that's what we do. We're performing all the time in terms of putting on different characters, different performances, because at one point we're kind, we're benevolent, we're wonderful, and the other time we're petty and we're wanting this and we're demanding, other times we're selfish, and other times we're the most giving people in the world. So we have all those different selves and those different performances. But yes, we do perform all the time. Mm-hmm. We do put on a mask. And it's only when you're with someone, that you authentically trust, that you can remove the mask and that they can see you. I was going to reveal too much. I'll have to censor. What can I say?
Of course.
No, that's one reason, by the way. I'll go ahead with that. Is that I've never reveal, where I live, because it's Superman.
Yes.
Was he Superman? Was he Clark Kent? Was he Kal-El? Well, when he went to the Fortress of Solitude in the North Pole, and by the way, I did not like the art direction that they used in the movie with Christopher Reeve 1,000 years ago. That wasn't the Fortress of Solitude. But the Fortress of Solitude was where he could be himself. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea of being able to, and of course, you share yourself with those people with whom you trust, mm-hmm. of course. So we're performing all the time. Absolutely.
And in Katharine Hepburn's case, it seemed like she really didn't know who her true self was. And do you think that's a problem with actors assuming different roles all the time and being different people?
No, I sense it as, I would never argue with Miss Hepburn, but every time you play a part, you discover more of yourself. You discover who you are. Because there has to be, of course, a little bit of you in every performance that you give. You have to give something about you in it. And you can rob from other people. I mean, you can rob how that person walks, or you can rob how that person's syntax, or that the playwright gives you that, or that person's cadence, or whatever. You can always rob. I mean, actors are thieves. They, as has been said before by Viola Davis when she presented Meryl Streep with the Lifetime Achievement Award, the Golden Globes. You are other people, but you rob. But no, I disagree. Actors, to be a really good, fine actor or actress, you need to know who you are. The whole thing about, I remember once someone saying, well, this actress, she went into therapy, but she shouldn't go into therapy because by being neurotic, she was a better actress. That's just baloney. No, an actor and actress needs to be very sure of him or herself. So the more centered you are, I think the more authentic you are, the better performer you are. That's the Peterson theory. I'll put it in the book.
The book. So along with that, it kind of, I think you were talking a little bit about knowing yourself. I feel like you're not into like the method acting kind of approach. Because the people who get so lost in a character that they don't know who they are anymore.
Yes, I'm not. And that's interesting because Alex Graves, the director of Game of Thrones, West Wing, etc., when he directed me in 2 films he said, Bob, you're a method actor. And I thought, how did he get that? And it's because I think before a take or whatever, I'd have to just get silent or whatever. I don't know. But no, I find that a lot of the English do this. But yes, you need to know internally what the character's thinking, what he wants, and victory, other tactic, expectation, all of that. But just by putting on, that's why you're nice to costumers, just by putting on the costume or putting on the jewelry or the makeup, which is a mask, all of that, the English work from the outside in. Laurence Olivier, the great, maybe arguably the finest actor of the 20th century, said it wasn't until he got the robes could he do Richard III. And so, yes, I do think a lot of it has to do with outside stuff and the voice and the whatever and the mechanics of all of that. And then it comes. But here's the deal. It doesn't matter which way you work as long as it works. Whether you work inside out or outside in, it doesn't matter as long as the result is a successful result. But I like to get all the externals taken care of. And then, of course, motivation. What is it my character or I want? What is it I want? What will I do when I get there? And blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
And that's basically the quote of what's on your back must feed your soul is
yes.
Everything that, your
yes.
props, your costume.
Yes. And that's important in rehearsal that you get it right too, that you dress appropriately for rehearsal.
Right.
In other words, you've heard me say it before. If you're doing Richard III, you don't come in cargo shorts and flip-flops. That's only if you're doing the musical Psycho Beach Party. So, I've known actors that have been sent home because they did not come to rehearsal dress properly. They did not dress properly for rehearsal. So I mean, because obviously, if you're doing, Robin Hood, you come in dressed in the right coat, the right shoes, the right clothes. Doesn't have to be the costume, of course, obviously, but you come dressed appropriately, so it feeds your soul.
Of course. Yeah, I felt that way when I tore up my shoes going down a rope. I was like,
Yes, I remember you doing that. Yes. Yeah,
uh,
because what you put on your back affects you.
right.
Um, uh, I have students in intro to theater who when they give their final presentation, I ask they wear shirt and tie if they're a gentleman. They walk into the classroom differently because of how they're dressed. So there you go. I'm sorry, I interrupted your next question.
No. I was just elaborating. That's basically exactly where I wanted to go. Because this doesn't just apply to just actors. This is literally everyone. It's how you present yourself.
Yes, you go appropriately dressed for the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when I go to a ball game, I wear my purple high tops and I have my big foam finger, number one, and I yell and scream. And when I go to the theater, I dress appropriately, shirt and tie, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you respect. Sir Tyrone Guthrie said, theater is an occasion. And you must treat it as that, as an occasion, and honor it as the occasion it is. Whether it's wearing your best shirt, and whatever your best shirt is, and it's the best thing you have is coveralls, that's fine. Then wear them. Wear your best, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be shirt and tie. If it's your best, that's what you wear.
Right. And I think you've mentioned a few times that theater is basically like church, or it's that ritual of it.
Right, because theater, by the way, as you learned in Intro to Theater, it started as a religious experience. It was a religious ceremony. It was a religious worship to the god Dionysius. But theater is a temple. Yeah, you treat it as if you're going to church. Absolutely.
Well, with your students, you regularly say that your students are your children. And I feel that that's very true for you. I know that you care about every single student that walks in front of you, as long as they put a little bit of effort back at you. And you also say that if you can hear my voice, you are the most important person on stage. While I know other teachers and directors who are kind of a little detached and they're not as involved with their students. And I wanted to know, how did this become your approach to teaching and directing?
Well, first of all, that was modeled for me by the directors that I had in Emporia, specifically Karl Bruder. That was just a model for me. And secondly, I don't understand how you can't be that. Because if you get into teaching or directing of any kind, it is a parental role. That's part of it. And specifically, if you're in a show, it is my job to take care of those cast members in the best way I know how to take care of them. Now, that doesn't mean I get into their personal lives. No. That's a different thing. But it means that during that process, whether it's in the classroom or the rehearsal hall, that I have to make sure that they are taken care of and that they are safe, and that they keep growing and stretching. And I don't understand my colleagues who don't get that, because it's inherent within teaching that you are a parental figure in some way. And it's nothing you seek. It's just inherent within the job itself. And especially, and of course, going back to directing, you need to see what I loved about being directed at Emporia, specifically by Dr. Bruder, was that I was always taken care of. I knew that I was never going to go on stage looking stupid. He would not let me make that mistake. He would always, and he was a taskmaster. Don't get me wrong. He was very demanding. Wasn't afraid to let you know if he wasn't happy. But he was very kind and generous and gentle in many other ways. And I think that that's part of the director's job, is to make sure that the actors and actresses and technicians understand that they're safe and that they're okay, but they're going to be pushed.
Mm-hmm.
And they may have to do it one more time, and that may be a lie. They may have to do it 2 more times. But yeah, so I don't understand my colleagues who are detached. I don't get, and there was my famous They're missing out on all the fun. They're missing out on the fun by just sitting back and not getting involved with the show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because everything I do in terms of a prescriptive setter, I have to get committed to it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I was picking Sherwood, the show that we did for the spring, when we finally got to go back on stage, I was talking a lot to a former college classmate of mine, and he lives in Seattle. And so we emailed, and I said, I'm thinking of this show, this show, this show. And he suggested shows. And finally, when I said, I'm doing Sherwood, he said, well, of course, that's what you wanted to do all along. He said, that was the love you had with Sherwood. And I went, oh, okay, yeah, okay, fine. And there you go. But okay.
So, well, when he says that, what is he's saying that you've been thinking about it this whole time? He's basically just being a yes man, repeating what you want.
And he was encouraging me with other scripts. He said, well, look at this script. Well, look at this script. And I think that was just a way to lead me back to Sherwood. Yeah. And by the way, that's nice to have that kind of good friend who's very savvy in the theater world. So it's very nice.
So many connections. Yeah. So I know you mentioned, you talked a little bit about Karl Bruder, and he seems to have a very big impact on your life. I wrote down here, but I wanted to know if there was someone that people cite you as their reason to love performing or the arts. You're kind of, Karl Bruder to us. And I wanted to know, was he your inspiration, or did you get it from actors or adults that made you who you are today?
Interesting. Well, of course, the first inspiration I had was my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And my father pushing me on stage since I was a little boy. Mm-hmm. And then when I went to Emporia, Karl Bruder really was a major influence. Mm-hmm. He was such a charming man. And he was, in fact, I finally, after I wrote, I've been obsessed, of course, with the Coolidge family for years. And when I did my first production of the Coolidge show, I finally got from him a letter that I'd been waiting to get my whole life. It was a letter of, okay, good. You did, as my friend Raymond Yarnell would say, you done good. And, but he was definitely an influence. But that doesn't mean certainly that there were other people who have inspired me. Mm-hmm. But he was probably the biggest factor.
Did you have maybe like actors growing up or actresses?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting, actors and actresses growing up. My favorite actor, when I saw, as a little boy, when I saw Lawrence of Arabia, which I still think is the greatest film ever made. Citizen Kane comes down the line, but Lawrence of Arabia is stunning. And when I saw Peter O'Toole's performance in Lawrence of Arabia, I was just knocked out. And then when I heard some of the things that he did, and David Lean, who was his Karl Bruder, and when I heard some of the things that he did on the set as an actor, and what he did to discover some stuff, it just thrilled me. So yeah, watching him act, and by the way, his performance in 1969's Goodbye, Mr. Chips, the musical, robbed of the Oscar. Wonderful performance. And well, he never gave a bad performance, but he was, watching him work was just wonderful because he was so theatrical but honest at the same time. There wasn't a false note in it, even though he was theatrical. It was just great. And my favorite actress, of course, is the other Hepburn, Audrey. That is a presence on the screen that has just never been. In fact, okay, too much information. Edit this part out.
Okay.
I own, paid dearly for, Miss Hepburn's desk set from her desk in her home in Switzerland. And then I own, wait for it, here it comes, I own a costume that she wore in the only television movie she made. It is an off-the-rack dress because, of course, she wears Givenchy, and I could never afford it. But this went up at an auction house. I said, this Audrey Hepburn dress that she wore in this movie. And I went, gotta have this. And so I bid on it and got it. And of course, where is it now? In a box, protected. I mean, you can't, why would I display it? Because it may give me, I did display it. No, when I did in the art gallery here, the White Art Gallery, when I did a display of my movie artifacts, etc., one of the things I put in display was the Audrey Hepburn dress. And that's the only time it's been out of the box.
Wow.
So that was a few $100s down a rat hole. But that said, when I die, go for it, put it on eBay, you'll get your money back plus. Or you'll get my money back plus.
Perfect. We'll put that somewhere in the will.
I should. Yeah.
On talking about memorabilia, would the dress be your favorite or most exclusive, or do you have something that's deep in the archives of?
Actually, one of my favorite pieces of memorabilia was the costume I wore when I played Charlie in Where's Charlie? And I will never forget this. It's because Charlie, he has to imitate his aunt. Mm-hmm. So he has to pose as his aunt in front of the girl so he can get the girl because it's Charlie's aunt. And I remember that costume was so wonderful and it was beautifully designed, etc., that I had to have it. Mm-hmm. And so I was given it finally. I was given that costume. And I have put it on display in my home. I see, the Fortress of Solitude. Mm-hmm. However, I had to take it down because it was fading. And it was getting, so I had to put it in dark closets to kind of save it. But however, we'll be right back after this commercial break. This is that costume and me in it.
Or White Side. Is that
Pardon?
Correct?
That's Charlie as Charlie's aunt.
Oh, yes.
No, White Side is up here somewhere.
I saw the old vintage wheelchair, and it's all the reused props. They all bleed together.
Yeah. So at any rate, but no, the Audrey Hepburn dress is extremely special.
Wow.
And I do have I have a 14 by 36 movie poster from every one of her movies except one.
And which one's that?
They All Laughed. And that's why, because the movie's called They All Laughed, and they didn't make a 14 by 36 poster of that. They had quit making them by then. They were only one sheet posters. Wow. So I have that collection, and it's gorgeous. But it's in a closet stacked very nicely because I don't want the sun to fade it and it'll lose its value. I'm at the point in my life where I need to pull this stuff out and just enjoy it, I guess. This has not been an interview. This has been therapy. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Runnels.
Of course.
We'll do another session, next Tuesday. I think I'm going to need it again. So there you go.
That'll be a few $1,000s. I'll bill you soon.
For sure.
And as you say, all a therapist is a really good friend that won't tell your secret.
Exactly. Joan Crawford said it. If you have one good friend and 1 ounce of common sense, you'll never need a therapist. And of course, the reason that you pay the therapist to shut up. But someday I should try that. I don't know.
Maybe.
But no, I've got good friends, so I don't need a therapist.
You're basically, your house seems to be like the salt mine in Hutchinson, where they have all the movie memorabilia and they store it because it has no moisture down there. Yeah. So whenever they need like some cut extra bits from 2001 Space Odyssey or something, they'll look in your closet.
Yeah, really.
Find the film reel.
It is true. That's great. I need to start thinning that out, I suppose. But I got lots of movie memorabilia.
I just keep it. Yeah. Well, you talked a little bit about the Coolidge family. I thought it would be good to. I kind of want to know because I've talked about it every once in a while, and I'm kind of part of, the Coolidge lineage. After I played Calvin, and Joe sent me But I just to know, where did that come from? Where did the love of the Coolidge family start?
I was 8 years old.
Oh my God.
Maybe older. When I was a kid, we didn't have television. TV was, something that only rich people had. My parents were school teachers, so there you go.
Mm-hmm.
There were 3 magazines on our coffee table: Saturday Evening Post, Life, and the National Geographic.
Mm-hmm.
And once I picked up a copy of the National Geographic, and it was a wonderful photo essay on the White House. The Eisenhowers were leaving. The Kennedys were moving in. And it was a story about the history of the White House. And there was one sentence that popped out at me. And it was about the tragedies of the White House and how Calvin Coolidge Jr. died after playing tennis on the White House lawn after developing a blister. And I was 8 years old. And that fascinated me. Stayed with me. 1,000 years later, in 1988, I contacted the Vermont Historical Society and said I would like to speak to John Coolidge, who was in his 80s, the surviving brother. He agreed to speak to me. I drove out to Vermont, Plymouth, Vermont, with my dad, went to the museum, and I have an interview with him on cassette tape. Mm-hmm. By the way, that interview, he said some things they'd never heard before. So the Coolidge Foundation, the Coolidge Library, has asked for that tape in time. And I said, when I die, you can have it. I love how you laugh at every time I say
it. Your story is always, I don't know, something about your rich history and anecdotes that just make me, you have such flowery language. I love it.
Yeah. So at any rate, I got permission to write the play. And I'm obsessed. Here we go. Here's a little virtual tour of the office.
Oh my gosh. And for the audio listeners.
Coolidge at the baseball game this summer, Calvin died. John Coolidge at Amherst, little Calvin, Glee Club, John Coolidge. And there's other Coolidge pictures that they're down here. Seriously, this is sad. They're down here in wrapping. You see, there's Calvin Coolidge there. I got pictures. I'm obsessed, obviously.
Yeah.
And we'll wrap packages later. It's several months till Christmas. Okay, so at any rate, I'm obsessed with the Coolidge family. The Coolidge play is the best thing I've ever written. It just, I don't know if I've written any good things, but if I've written anything, that's the best thing. And the final speech from it, of course, is something that I've done versions of that play 3 times now. The last one was a few years ago. Kevin Norfleet, who's now the drama teacher at East High School, I think, played John Coolidge for me and was just superb. And Scott McPhail, where there's a picture of him as little Calvin over here. Scott McPhail was the very first Calvin Coolidge Jr. Mm-hmm. And that's when my mentor, Karl Bruder, saw the play and said, that kid's got stuff. So at any rate, I have no idea why I'm obsessed with him, except it has started when I was a little boy.
Wow.
And I just cannot get rid of them. And I don't want to get rid of them.
Yeah.
In fact, I would love to do the play one more time. Because it's interesting, just getting the right combination of people, etc. But I want to do the play one more time. So.
Wow.
Because each time you do it, you figure stuff out. Mm-hmm. And unlike a Broadway preview, where you take it on the road, figure it out, take it on the road, figure it out, at Butler, which is fabulous. I mean, Butler has been so brilliant for me, so kind to me. But once I do a show, then I think, I know how to fix that. Mm-hmm. But you can't do it the next year. I got to wait 8 years to do it. So I've done the show. First production was in 1988. The next production was in 1997. And the last production was 2014. But I do want to say Kevin Norfleet was just brilliant. Mm-hmm. He really was. He won the Spelman for Best Actor for that. And Stunningly good work. What a guy. And I got to have lunch with him. I need to give him a call. But at any rate,
Is that is that
that's
still
it.
your desktop wallpaper on your computer?
Yes, as a matter of fact, let's just give that a quick look, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, just over the shoulder, looking at Mr. Peterson's monitor. Well, maybe he's logging in now.
There it is.
There it is.
Yeah, that's Kevin, and that's Tanner Price, who played the newspaper boy.
Mm-hmm.
And it is. Hold that. But at any rate, it is. I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And
well,
I'm gonna find a place to do it one more time.
I'm glad that you introduced me to the family, because I probably would have never even thought about going back to the late 20s or to even think about the Coolidge as a president. And I came to kind of find right now that he's my favorite president. Just his policy and the way he treated people, and it's very progressive. But then it was also very the government was very self-contained. It wasn't like spread out, very libertarian. So it's just amazing how you come about the things that you are passionate and interested in.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of that, just a side note, I really enjoyed that show.
Me too.
I liked Joe Sunday. I thought that was just a fun experience.
It really was. And it was especially during COVID, I can't believe we were able to do that, to be honest. But it worked out so well, and it turned out really well.
Yeah. And I was glad by the time we got through the major part of COVID, et cetera, vaccines and et cetera, we could do Sherwood.
Right.
That was really, really fun. Really.
So a while back, you were talking about Lawrence of Arabia, T.E. Lawrence, and the wonderful movie. And I recently was reading about Martin Scorsese, the director and writer. He criticized New Hollywood for being filled with like big budget superhero movies and corporate made franchise movies of just sequel after sequel. And he claims that there's less room for deeper stories to be told. And as a movie buff and an actor, what is your opinion on these new movies released? I know you've watched new stuff, and I obviously a bit about Superman, but I don't think you're into the new superhero movies. So what do you think about these new movies? Are you looking to the past for movie consumption?
Yeah. They're noisy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the noise shouldn't come from blah, 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 blah. The noise should come from internal, or emotional conflict as opposed to noise. Mm-hmm. Every movie that I've seen that has a fight where you're throwing people up against the wall, or they're throwing, machines are throwing lasers at each other, they go on twice as long as they need to. As Ruth Gordon told Susan Strasberg, half the effort would be just as effective. That said, I like movies that have a beginning and a middle and an end in that order, where the protagonist is fighting for a goal. Recent movies that have thrilled me, and maybe these aren't too recent. The King's Speech, best picture of the year. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. By the way, speaking of, I saw Nomadland, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture. It is brilliant. Mm-hmm. And she is stunningly brilliant. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those pictures I can only see once. Because I wanted to throw myself under a moving car after I saw it, because it was just so depressing. I mean, it was just like, oh my gosh. However, I will give it was a wonderfully brilliant film with a protagonist working for that goal. But I do like movies that and by the way, I love musicals and fluff too, like La La Land. Loved La La Land. Thought it was wonderful. But I'm tired of noisy movies that are shoot 'em up for the sake of shoot 'em up. How about this is what I am going for, and this is what I will hopefully get. So give me The King's Speech over Fight 'em to the Death Part 7. You know, that's just me.
Yeah, I get that.
And I love the first Superman, by the way, with Christopher Reeve. Thought it was great.
Yeah, I that and then thinking about that, that was maybe you would have remembered it. I wasn't alive when it was released, but I know that superhero movies weren't a big thing like they are now. It wasn't like part of common culture. So do you remember how that was when it was released? Was it just like for nerds?
Yeah, it was a hit. Oh yeah, it was an absolutely hit. Yeah. And by the way, the other Superman movie that I liked, I think it was, they've all got different titles. Superman Returns. It was the one with James Caviezel or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that's the one I believe. It was one of the best versions of the gospel according to St. Luke that I've ever seen. Mm. I saw it and I went, I've seen it. I know this story. Oh yeah, I read it. It's a gospel. And it was really interesting because, as you know, you've learned, hopefully, that there are no new stories. Mm-hmm. They're just plotted differently. I mean, we see the Cinderella story all the time. It's just plotted differently. You know, one of my favorite versions of Cinderella is Splash. Instead of a glass slipper, it's a fishtail. You know, it's Daryl Hannah and Tom Hanks as Prince Charming. I love that. Titanic was nothing more than Cinderella or Cinderfella. You know, with Molly Brown being the fairy godmother and what's her name, Kate Winslet was the Princess Charming. Yeah. But it's, you know, it's not a great version of Cinderella, but Jack Rose, Jack Rose, she's in the boiler room. But he's in the boiler room, handcuffed to the pipes. That got a little old to me. But at any rate, beautiful movie, by the way.
My favorite adaptation of Freaky Friday is Uniquely Frank.
Which is Freaky Friday was an adaptation of something else. Because yes, but thank you. Yeah, and by the way, you know that was Bernie Wonsetler's idea.
Yes. He thinks he's not one for like, you know, creative direction. I think that we should bring him into writer rooms more, and it would just be more grounded, less shoot 'em up, more real stories.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's true, because there's no new stories. In fact, one of the Alvin show before that was based on Roger Stone, you know, the criminal politician. And Frank finds himself doing, and I robbed from Roger Stone's life when he was a little boy, what he did.
Before you continue on with the Uniquely Frank and Alvin, can you explain what that is for the audience?
The Alvin thing?
Yeah.
And Alvin, of course, he's an alligator, and he is it's a series of stories of an alligator who is a member of the campus, if you will, of Digby University, where Franklin Osborne Barrett Digby Jr. IV and his friends are all on this campus, and Alvin is Jiminy Cricket to Frank's Pinocchio. He's his conscience. And so it's a set of stories, it's children's theater stories that are about this alligator on this prep school campus. And they're little morality tales. Yeah, they're lessons to be learned. So, and by the way, see, that's another thing. I think a teacher, a director is a parent. Mm-hmm. It's important when I do a children's theater show that the kids come in and have a great time and entertain, but they walk away with a value. Mm-hmm. A lesson learned, a concept of this is right from wrong. This is the value that I needed to know. Because see, that's what the Grimm fairy tale tales did. They taught values. Mm-hmm. Cinderella's about being kind. Jack and the Beanstalk's about having courage. Sleeping Beauty's about patience. I mean, hello. Little Sir Echo, how do you do? Hello. So I hope no one's listening to this because they're, you know,
No, of course. This is private. No one would ever watch this. So don't even worry about that. I want to I'm not going to tell a story because it didn't happen. But I want you to maybe talk about last Halloween. You were telling our acting class about a crazy dream of people banging down your door while you were like at 11 o'clock at night while you were in your basement trying to sleep. And personally, I have no clue who would be.
Of course not.
No, I have no clue who that would be. And I hope they are found and, you know, prosecuted for all of their damages they caused.
Of course,
But
absolutely.
but then you told us after that you aren't really fond of Halloween.
No.
And as an actor, you would think that's kind of like right up your wheelhouse, but obviously that's the opposite. And I want to know why
It's
that
the
is.
opposite. Because see, that's what I do for a living,
Mhm.
is get dressed up and portray other people sometimes.
Mhm.
I don't like going to restaurant. I don't go to any restaurants on Halloween anymore, because the last time I went to a restaurant, the waitress came when she's wearing clown white makeup and this frizzy nylon purple wig and the whole night. And I just want pancake and eggs. I don't need to have bozo serving me. And I even avoid the cafeteria here in the on campus, because everybody dresses up and they're all giggling at each other. They're dressed up like Minnie Mouse and cowboys, and it's like no. So it's sort of like I had a friend say to me, Bob, I have this great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to a mystery theater weekend. I found something else to do very quickly. Why would I want to go to a mystery theater weekend? I do theater for a living,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to have a break. I need to recharge. I on the weekend, I like to, so that I can go back and do theater. So at any rate, no, Halloween bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all of these people getting dressed up, giggling at each other when I just want to go eat.
Right.
And the other holiday that I don't like is coming up, 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
It's noisy. It's noisy, and so I don't get. Now I like the food.
Mm-hmm.
Where I live is in a condominium, and we have a 4th of July breakfast. Wouldn't miss it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wonderful. But then I go home and put on earphones and just zone out.
I know you're a pretty deep patriot, so I know it's
Oh
not
yeah,
that part.
absolutely.
It's just the loud noises, like
Yeah,
fireworks.
absolutely deep patriot. Absolutely,
Of
100%.
course. Well, once they find out who was at your house, let me know. And
I will.
okay.
Yeah, I get on. I understand I think there's a video recording of it somewhere on somebody's phone.
I don't know about that.
So I'll check that out.
But so I know I talked a little bit about Katharine Hepburn's memoir titled Me. It's a very original, very unique title. And I want to know, when the Bob Peterson memoir, when it's written, what should it be titled?
Never too much rehearsal.
Mm.
You can never have too much rehearsal in your life and in stage. So I'd call it never too much rehearsal.
Mm.
I think.
Yeah. I've heard you say that more than a lot of phrases you say. So I think that would really encapsulate everything you've done.
I hope so, because I think that's true in everything you do.
Of course.
There's no such thing as being over-rehearsed. Mm-hmm. There's just bad rehearsal. There you go.
I've never been part of those. So I don't want to keep you too much longer.
Oh, you could. I have no life.
You have a very busy itinerary, I understand. So to end the podcast, I would love if you could share a story from an adventure that you've had over the years, and if it taught you anything in the future.
Yeah, there are a couple.
Okay.
But I'm only will share one.
Okay.
In fact, this was the basis of the commencement speech that I gave several years ago. When I was doing Where's Charlie for Dr. Bruder, the 11 o'clock number is Once in Love with Amy. It is the number. Choreographer had staged me on the pit rail. I had the costumer was very generous to me. I had the skimmer. I had everything. I was looking fabulous. And it was so well done by other people making me look good. But even the technicians would gather in the wings to watch. And I was feeling very, very good about it. Mm-hmm. I was young. Just at one of the rehearsals, before dress. It was like second tech. The orchestra played the intro, and I was on ready to step onto the pit rail with the skimmer, looking like I'm Bob Peterson and you're not. I was in black darkness. So the orchestra played the intro again, and there's nothing. And from the back, Karl Bruder's voice says, "What is going on?" And in the catwalks where the follow spot operators were, there was this voice of this little freshman voice. He reminded me of Stefan, going, "I'm doing everything I can. I can. Well, you know, the lamp had burned. It wasn't his fault. The lamp had burned. And so we took the break to replace the lamp in the follow spot. And Karl Bruder looked at me and went. And so I went to the back of the house and sat down with him. And he said to me, with his steely blue eyes, "Oh, it's a fine number. I'm pleased with it. Your work is very good. But I hope you learned something tonight, young man. I hope you learned that you are not the most important person in this number." And he got up and walked away.
Wow.
One of the greatest life lessons I ever had. I figured it out. I got what he meant.
Mm-hmm.
And there you are. That was one of the most defining moments of my life. That was the right words at the right time. Mm-hmm. I've been blessed and fortunate to have had a lot of people share with me through their lives things that I needed to hear. Mm-hmm. But that was something that has really stuck with me because I put it all together. I figured that out. And yeah, so there you go. That probably was one of the most defining moments
I can tell from every single experience that it's basically you've funneled all of your information and put it directly into every single student or actor you've encountered. And I wish we could just have an archive of all your information because you seem so knowledgeable. Not seem, you are. I know.
Well, you're generous.
I try sometimes. I'm working it. But I just want to really thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
This has been a treat.
I'm excited for the next time we get to talk because I feel like this could be a 3-hour podcast. And I think people would be interested in listening to you for 3 hours.
Well, let's see how the ratings go for the first.
Right. We'll have a part 2 and a 3 and then a series.
Sure.
But I want to thank you. And then if you want to hear more, you can go to theseekingcontext.com to listen to our other podcast and join us next time to find out what happens on Seeking Context.
Right. Goodbye. Well, thank you, Kate. You've been very good. You're very good at this. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.